Hello friends, today we are going to talk about the Luna Swirl. The Luna Swirl originated or was created by Christina Greenwood of Luna and Leaf in Texas. Since she created this design, it has become wildly popular. It is easy to see why. We are going to dig into the logistics of this design today. In a Luna Swirl, there is a gradient of color. So either you're going from a dark pigmented color to a lighter color to white, or you're going from a lighter to a darker. It's a gradient. So you have multiple colors having a gradient pour for each one of those colors, and then in the end you do a hanger swirl through. The hanger swirl, there's really no rhyme or reason. It's however you want to do that. It's fun to play around with options for a hanger tool. A hanger tool is very easy to acquire. You can get one on Amazon. I will leave a link in the description of this video so you can go grab one yourself. This is the formulation that I'm using for today's design. Please feel free to screenshot this and use this formulation in your attempt to make a Luna Swirl. A few things that add to the success of this technique are the slightly higher water amount than I usually use. I usually use a 1-to-1 lye water ratio. It tends to speed things up a little bit, but I want a lot of work time. So that's why I did a 35% lye concentration for this particular design. Another element that allows for a lot of work time is the high amount of lard. Lard tends not to speed things up as quickly. It doesn't have quite as high of a melting point as, say, tallow or some butters or working with beeswax. Another element is having a decelerating fragrance oil. Now, I have found personally that a fragrance oil that accelerates usually heats a batch way up as well. A decelerating fragrance oil typically doesn't go through gel phase as easily as an accelerating fragrance oil. So that is just a personal observation from hundreds of batches of soap. Today's batch, I chose Ruby Red Martini fragrance from the Midwest Fragrance Company. It is a brand new fragrance that they came up with, and I have found, again, that with citrus fragrance oils that don't have vanillin but are just straight citrus, they tend to decelerate. So that is why I chose this particular fragrance to accomplish this design. The colors that I chose, this blue is Indigo Girls from Mad Micas. The purple was Purpleberry Bliss from Scentsational Soap Supply. And then the hot pink is Electric Bubblegum Colorant from Brambleberry. Of course, I had to make it difficult and use 3 different colorants from 3 different companies, but hey, you can use whatever colorants you want to use. My mold is the standard Amazon mold that most makers start off with. I have 38 ounces of base oil or 1,077 grams of base oil. In measuring out my separate colored portions, I did 250 grams per color. So for the blue, I did 250 grams. For the purple, I did 250 grams. And for the pink, I did 250 grams. Do you have to measure exact amounts for colors? Absolutely not. You can eyeball it. But the main factor is you want to make sure that you have enough white to create this gradient of colors, because a gradient is created by adding something else to it. In this case, I'm adding white. You could try doing a gradient with black. That would be really super stunning. As you can see, I'm adding a little bit of white, and then I'm making 2 passes, one down the length of the mold and then one back. You can do a closer gradient by just doing 1 pass and then adding more white, but just remember it's going to be a little bit more time intensive, labor intensive, the more of a seamless gradient you're going to have. If you want to have more of a defined, like, wow, there it gets lighter there, and then it gets lighter there, like you can tell the sharp lines, you can add more white, you can add bigger amounts at one time. I try to make it somewhat cohesive with one swipe down the mold and one swipe back. So if you're going to do 2 swipes, if you're going to do 4 swipes, you just decide what you want to do. This is no right or wrong. It's basically just creative expression. I am showing you a loose version of the Luna Swirl. You can take it and run with it however you prefer. And that's honestly the beauty of art, because we can do the same exact thing in so many countless different ways. So when I come to the end of one color, I add a stripe of just straight white. The same amount, so it's 1 stripe down and 1 stripe back. This just gives a little bit of delineation between the colors and adds a little bit of interest. So now I'm coming in with my purple. This is the full strength of that purple colorant that I have. I use 1 teaspoon per pound of oil for my colorants. For my mica powders, always use mica powders from reputable companies if you're going to go the route of micas. There are some that are just simply not created equal. A lot of times people think that they are going to save money by going on Amazon and getting micas, and find out very quickly that they're either not soap safe or not super pigmented or just inferior quality. So if you're looking for some suppliers for mica colorants, I do recommend Mad Micas. They're one of my favorite colorant suppliers. Brambleberry, Nurture Soap. I believe Nature's Garden also has colorants. Scentsational soap supply. There are so many reputable places to order from colorants. And remember, it doesn't just need to be micas. You could use turmeric and activated charcoal or clays if you wanted to not have micas in your soap. So this is just the same spiel as with the blue. I'm adding a little bit of white, continuing to do stripes down the edge. And as you can see, the mold is filling up. It kind of gets a little creepy feeling because you're like, is it going to spill over? Is it not? I have an angle on it with using my scale. And then when it gets full, I will take the angle off and just have the mold as it is, flat. My camera cut out, so now I'm on to the hot pink. I'm doing the same thing as I did with the other colors, adding a little bit of white. With neons, it can be a little harder to see the gradient because they are so ultra super pigmented. I am pouring this right down the side, trying to just kiss the edge of that silicone mold so it's sliding down the wall. It can be really tricky, honestly, at this point, but you just keep going. And that decelerating fragrance oil is really, you can see that it's super liquidy still. Now in a traditional Luna Swirl, you save a little bit of the fully pigmented soap. So I would have saved a little bit of blue, a little bit of purple, and a little bit of pink, and that's your very, very, very last stripe before doing your hanger swirl. I forgot to save a little bit of the fully pigmented colors, so I'm gonna go with the fully pigmented colors. They're the kind that have a little bit of white in them, but it is what it is. So this is my last little stripe of white. And then here I am coming in with that last little stripe of color left over from my pictures. But like I said, originally you're actually supposed to save some of the fully pigmented color, but I first did a Luna Swirl in Amy Warden's Soap Challenge Club. And I had seen it before. I had seen the design technique, and I thought I could never do that. That is way too advanced. There's no way I could pull that off. A lot of times, though, it just comes down to having a good tutorial, having someone to ask questions if you run into a snag, and having a little bit more information. You know, sometimes we're afraid of things because we simply do not have enough information to not be afraid of them. So if you are intimidated by this design technique, please reach out. If there's a specific element that you're like, oh, I just could never do that, reach out to me. Ask a question in the comments. Let's tackle this together. You can totally do it. I know if I can do it, you can do it too. That water amount, the decelerating fragrance oil, having a little bit extra lard and olive oil, it all adds together to create a slightly easier experience as opposed to having a fragrance oil that accelerates and maybe a recipe that sets up a lot faster. If you have a few little tricks up your sleeve, it really can be quite satisfying to pull off this design. Now I'm just adding a little bit of top design. This soap is still very runny. I didn't really have a design for the top in mind, so I just did a little swirl, and then I came in with some eco glitter at the end, but this has to happen first. This is one of the most satisfying parts for me personally. It's wiping down the mold, the edges of the mold. That way when I cut it, it has a nice little edge. I don't know, it's just my thing. And I'm sure it's not just my thing. I'm sure other makers feel the same way. We just don't talk about that, do we? So I did tap it down to help release some of the air bubbles that are in there. A lot of times air bubbles can be introduced from the hanger tool, so keep that in mind when you are using a hanger tool to kind of tamp your mold down after using it to try to release any air bubbles. Here is that eco glitter. This is from Brambleberry. It is the fine silver rainbow eco glitter. It's a what is it called? Holographic. Holographic. We used to just call it holographic. Everyone's like, hollow. It's hollow. I'm sorry, but in the 90s it was just holographic. Maybe that makes me old. I don't know. But there it is. It's from Brambleberry. A little goes a long way. So with decelerating fragrance oils, I have found that not only does it not go through gel phases easily, it usually takes a little bit longer to set up in the mold. So this is after 24 hours of being in the mold, which for me is almost unheard of because I have a high concentration of lard. I usually work with a very reduced water concentrate or water amount, and so usually I'm able to cut a lot sooner. But keep that in mind when you're checking your loaf. Does the soap peel away from the edge of the silicone liner easily? If it does, try taking it out. If not, let it sit a little longer. Here's the final cut. It is gorgeous. I'm very happy with this. Beautiful Luna. And I did also add sodium lactate to this formulation simply because I knew it would probably take longer in the mold before I was able to cut it. That sodium lactate helps to harden it up. It's just a salt-based liquid hardener, and it can really help if you know it's going to take a while and you are impatient. And here is the final cut, all beveled. I did stamp it with my little biscuit stamp that I got from Amazon. The beveling tool I got from Marina at Creamy Obsession. I will also put the link to that in the description of this video. You have the tools and the skills to be able to accomplish this design. Don't sell yourself short. I know it's easy to limit ourselves, but you totally can do this, and I want to help you accomplish that goal. I hope this video was helpful as a tutorial, and thank you so much to the makers who contributed to the pictures at the beginning of the video. You guys are complete rock stars. I cannot wait to see what you create with this design technique.